I am replacing the floorboards in my aluminum trailer. However, all the screws are stripped, so only a few will come out, even with a hammer drill. So I made a couple cross cuts, put the blade just thinner than the boards themselves, the 2x8s, and then I knocked these little pieces out, and you can see then where I can get to these screws. You can see them rusted. So I've made the cross cuts. Here I'm going to bust the boards out. So that leaves these screws, these rusted screws. Stupid Phillips head. They were all stripped, wouldn't come out. So here we are doing the tedious task of getting these stupid screws out. This is going to take a while. Well over 100 of these to get out. I'll get out the ones I can with the hammer drill, but it doesn't look too promising that way. Okay, to make things quicker, I have found that I can get them started with the vice grips. A bit, and I can hit them with the hammer drill. So in an area that the bolt or the screw is not recessed, I'm able to do this a lot quicker. Back on this back ledge, they were recessed. There was a wall behind, so it took a long time with the vice grips. And when I got them loosened to a certain point, some of them I could continue getting them out quicker with the hammer drill. But this, where these cross members are not recessed, so much faster getting it out with the vice grips this way. With these cross cuts perpendicular to the wheels, parallel to the axle, I had to sink the saw blade just beneath the wood, and it was cutting between, on the empty space between the rails. But make sure you look under and make sure that there's no wires that you're going to hit on that deeper cross cut. So as you can see, I made 2 cross cuts side by side, and then I knocked these out, and then I'm able to pry these bars off, the little slats of wood that are left. I'm able to pry those off the frame. I don't know, maybe someone on YouTube has an easier way, but this is working out okay, and I'm going to continue. But what a pain. You can see all these screws that are all weathered, and they will not come out. So I gotta cut the wood off and vice grip them out, back them out. I'm sweeping up here because I was sitting in this stuff and it was all over my pants, and you don't want to kind of breathe in all these solid dust toxins from the treated lumber. And here are the 2 cross cuts. So I've already knocked these ones out. I knocked these ones out. And that leaves me another row that I can pry out off a cross member. Almost done getting the floorboards off. I just kept making cross cuts and prying the boards off. Many of the bolts, the screws broke off and they're in the aluminum, but I figure I'll leave them in. It'll be kind of like rivets. It'll just strengthen that area instead of leaving it as holes. I was originally going to put the boards in, climb under, and drill through the existing holes so that I knew where to put the screws so they would go in the exact same holes. But many of these holes are plugged with screw heads, so I'm just gonna sink the new screws wherever I want into the frame. And I have one last bit to go. The sides are partially notched. I didn't go all the way in because there's wires that run right by the side. But since I notched this, they break off easily. And I've just got the upper portion to get off. And so it wasn't bad. You can see the notches over here in the last board. As I'm making the cross cuts across, the guard on the, not the guard, but the thing the saw rides upon, the sled, it hits the side of the trailer and just is about right so it doesn't hit the wires running down the side of the trailer. But because of that notch there, I was able to knock it out with a sledge, and the boards pull up very easily. It kind of gives it a weakness in the board. And since I have the bed off, I didn't even plan on doing this, but I'm gonna wire wheel the axles and put some stop rust on it and then paint them. And we should be good to go. And wear a respirator when you cut or treated lumber. It's got a whole bunch of toxins in it. I actually believe it has quite a bit of arsenic in it as well. I could be wrong. It's got bad chemicals in it though, probably formaldehyde and whatever else. So as it is cutting and as you're sweeping up, wear a respirator. So this is the last row. This is the last two cuts I'll have to make, just knocking out the little partitions, and we are almost done removing all the wood. So I'm applying rust mort to the axle, and I'll do the same up there. So I'll put my nitrile gloves on. I'm applying rust mort with a rag. So I will use a rust conversion kit. It's not going to be perfect. I didn't get all down to bare metal, but it's so much better than it was, and I'll paint it, and I'll probably never have to do this myself again. I hit my rail, not my rail, my axle with it, and I will let that dry, then I'll hit it with Rust-Oleum. And that should be good for quite a few years. Then I gotta hit the other one. It's a double axle trailer. You can see the difference between the two now. It is an aluminum trailer, but these axle housings are steel. So there's the one I just did, and there's the old one. So I'll hit that one too, and I'll finish taking the boards off while this one's drying, and then I'll hit it with Rust-Oleum and then grind that one down. I suppose if you're watching this video, you're watching it because you have to do or you are doing something similar. If you're prying up one of these long boards out of your trailer, as you pry, put junk pieces of wood under one you just pried up. That will raise the next one up a bit and give it tension as you go to pry it up, and it'll pull up easier. And then I will move this block of wood. Where's my finger? I'll move this block of wood over to here when I do this one. Okay, all the wood is out of the trailer. Up in this corner here, I'm going to patch up some rivets in the diamond plate at the bottom corner. I am going to spray paint this axle. Then I'm going to hit the next one with the wire wheel, and then I'll rust mort it and paint it too. I'm going to use a cutoff wheel on any remaining screws because I am not dealing with those, trying to back them out with a vice grip. And we'll go from there. Using Rust-Oleum high performance enamel. I don't really care if I hit the aluminum. Because it's going to be under the trailer. Okay, the bottom of this piece is unattached. It was originally attached on by rivets. You can be intimidated if you've never used rivets before, because I think one of the things is understanding the concept of what it is. And that was one of the things for me at first. I didn't understand how they worked. It's so simple. So this is a rivet. This long end is just, most of it is going to be cut off. This end, the long end here, is it goes into your gun. It inserts into the gun. I'm not going to do it yet. The hole, or the other side, goes into the hole that you will drill. You want to drill a hole the same size of this shaft right here. And then once you put it in, that tool pulls on this, pulls it so hard that it flattens this round ball. And as it flattens, it spreads out to look like this piece, a flange. So on the inside of the metal that you cannot see, or I suppose if you were connecting two pieces of metal and you could see the underside, then you would see this flatten kind of like a flange over here. And as it flattens, it stops it from pulling out. And that's all there is to it. So, very simple concept. This side goes into the rivet gun. You drill a hole the size of this shaft, and that rivet gun, as you squeeze, 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 it will flatten this end, this ball on the end, and it will pull it open. As it pulls it open to look similar to this end, that will keep it from coming through that hole. So I'll demonstrate a couple. I just throw my used rivets, not used, well actually to clean up, I have a bunch of shafts in here that I already used instead of them laying on the ground. But I do keep my drill bit in here, so I don't have to keep figuring out what size drill bit I have to use for this shaft. So I don't know if these holes line up. They do not. They don't line up with previous holes. So, but they're close. So I'm not going to drill. I'm not going to use the same hole because the rivet could the hole may be too big. If it hits the original hole, it's going to make it too big. So I'm just going to drill a new hole. I'm going to put this shaft in the rivet gun. I'm going to put this in the hole I just drilled and push in. Then I'm going to squeeze a couple times, and it's going to pull that shaft real hard, and then it'll break it off. And it's riveted. It's stuck here. Rivets are so easy to use, and they are extremely strong. They hold airplanes together. Unless you're building airplanes, however. You don't really need to go spend a whole bunch of money on a rivet set. My stuff gets used hard, and this rivet set works great. This is a, I think it was 29 bucks. It has a rotating head. That was at Harbor Freight. I highly recommend it. You can swivel the head to get into tight places. If I would have understood the concept of rivets, I would have used them years long before I did. They're so simple. It was just that I didn't understand how they worked, and I thought it was complicated. It is one of the it's one of the simplest tools you'll ever use. Really good for fastening things together. Well, months ago, I put that piece of aluminum with rivets on the front corner of the trailer, and it really firmed it up. And I never put one over here. So I might as well get to it while I'm doing the rest of this. So I had a scrap piece of aluminum. I laid it out and I'm ready to cut. There are a lot of ways to cut aluminum. I prefer the angle grinder. I try to go as slow as possible with my trigger, and I use very, very light pressure. Do not push hard into the aluminum because it's a very soft metal and it will gum up on you. If you barely touch the aluminum as you're raking the angle grinder over the aluminum, you'll make cut after cut after cut, and you'll soon have it enough where the piece will just fall off, or it'll be bendable enough for you to break it off, and then you can smooth it out with a different type of disc. And we're gonna rivet you in. Oh, that's still hot from cutting. Oh, that's hot. All right, 3/16 rivets by 1/2 inch long. Well, hopefully when this snaps, the foam doesn't fall off the trailer. Wow, that's tight. Beautiful. This makes the trailer so much more solid. It made that corner over there so stable. Uno, dos, tres. Y. Strong. Awesome. Here I am just reinforcing the electrical ties. They were too short, didn't have any longer, so I spliced two together. And I'm not sure how well I trust that over the years. And during the winter months, those things can get brittle and break. So I'm also just putting electrical tape. I've seen electrical tape last on vehicles for ever, basically. And there we are. Wire wheeled it just like the other, rust mortared it, and then Rust-Oleum spray painted it. And I shouldn't have to do that again during my lifetime. I am using the Amish method. I'm not even measuring here, putting the board nice and tight, flush to the front. And then I'm just going to use my square and draw it off. And I always overestimate when I cut, so might be a sliver too long when I cut. I'll cheat on the long side, but it's better than cutting too short. I can always take a sliver off. Beautiful. My Amish friends would be proud. So I'm going to take a shot of this frame now. I am going to put some D-hooks up in the corner there with some angle iron underneath to reinforce them. But I don't like the idea of hauling my heavy Kubota, just with being wood being the backing for the D-ring. So you won't be able to see this after I put the trailer on, but here's the extension of the frame under the boards. I'm going to cut a hole here in the wood, and I will also cut a hole on this side, and I will bring a heavy chain up, and it'll be there all the time. I will attach probably a carbiner or something to the chain so it doesn't fall back through, so it'll be here. Excess chain will be there all the time. That will allow that chain to stay in there. It won't fall through. That chain will run from here up through the board and then up through this board. I will not allow it to fall through the hole, but it still allows the chain to be loose. So when I hit my ratchet strap and grab onto that, it is on the frame, not the wood. For the D-rings, I'll use that to haul my light stuff. Who knows what, furniture, weightlifting equipment, whatever it is. But when we're talking a big machine that may roll off the back of the trailer, if this wood fails, I don't want that to happen. I called Leonard Trailer, the factory that makes these, the trailers, and I asked them what they used for the screws. They said they switched out from what they were using to just using simple deck screws, exterior deck screws, to hold the wood into the aluminum. So that is what I'm using per their advice. Alright, I don't know what kind of advice they gave me. Even pre-drilled to fit these screws, that aluminum is so thick that it is snapping these screws. So that's a no-go. Working out my frustration while deciding whether to go to Home Depot or not. 2 hours of my life wasted. Went to Home Depot and got these. There's 200 for, it was about 50 bucks for these Tex self-drilling screws, wood to metal, and should work fine. We will see. I absolutely hate Phillips heads, screws when doing something like this. So we will see. We're going to put a tiny bit of elbow grease into this. Push a little bit into the drill as it's going in. Backing out a broken screw from earlier. I'm sure if you're watching this video, everybody knows how to do that, but just in case there is one person that doesn't. I don't like that cutting right at the end of a knot, so I'm going to turn this board around.
You can see as I drill the screw stopping as it hits the metal, then it takes a bit more and it screws into the metal. Nice screws.
So I'm wedging this board in here. I'm gonna sink the screw until it hits the metal but not go into the metal. Then I will push on this to close this gap. So I'm gonna push this in with my shoulder and my body weight. See what we can do about getting rid of that gap. You're gonna have some boards that are warped. See that? That's open on the end there, the gap. Here. So, you screw the one end in, do not screw any more screws in, because you want the whole length of this board so that you can push that top in, and then you're going to sink the screws at the top, and then you'll sink the screws all the way on the inside. If you come here and screw, 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 it's going to be too hard to try to close that gap with a short run of wood. You want to use this long piece so that you've got that much to play with. A gap like this, if you have a friend that's able to push on this board and close that gap while you screw in, but I don't have anybody here, so we'll push and screw. I'm just going to tap on this with the hammer, and that's closing up here. And this is closing up really well. I'm going to give it a couple more taps. I'm going to sink this screw. Also, if you cut it right, cheat on the long side of the mark and make your board fit really nice and snug. And that way it's snug enough where you can just tap these and close the gaps.